In today's episode, we are going bigger than ever, because I am going to be sharing over the course of the next few episodes my top 100 board games of all time, the 2024 edition. So if you like board games and you're interested in learning about some of the best board games ever designed, then you are in the right place. Today we'll be going over games 100 through 76. My name is Nick Murray, and you are listening to the Bitewing Games podcast. It has now been over 2 years since I last shared my top 50 games of all time, and 2 human years equates to roughly 15 board game hobbyist years, so that means my list is very outdated. Just to give some perspective, since sharing my last top games of all time list, I've added over 150 more games and removed over 50 games from my collection. I've had roughly 1,000 more plays of board and card games in that time as well. 1,000 plays will change a gamer, no doubt. While my list is dramatically different and larger from a couple years ago, my core preferences, tastes, and biases are largely the same. Here is some context that has shaped my love of board gaming. First, I'm a shameless Reiner Knizia fan. Reiner's design style fits my tastes perfectly. I love games that are easy to get to the table, yet surprisingly deep and full of dynamic interactions. That's exactly how Knizia has been designing games for decades now. This is what led us at Bitewing Games to work with him on so many publishing projects. But the fact that we work so well with Reiner Knizia has led me to play and research literally hundreds of his designs at this point. And an inevitable side effect of playing so many of Knizia's best creations is that my top 100 list is absolutely infected with Knizia games. You and I will have to come to terms with that somehow, and if it makes you feel any better, there are 4 times as many Knizia games that I have played that did not make my top 100 list compared to the ones that did. There are plenty of his designs that I don't like, and if you want proof, you can check out my tier list to see how I ranked them all. You can find that on the Bitewing Games YouTube channel, where Scott and I rank over 160 Reiner Knizia games. Second, I almost always prefer high player interaction over low. In my opinion, the most interesting aspect of any game is typically how it pits the players against each other, their wits and their personalities. Additionally, potent player interaction is the number one thing that keeps a game coming back to my table for many more plays, as this keeps a game from feeling stagnant. Third, I gravitate to clean and pretty games. The more fiddly, messy, demanding, or ugly a game is, in its setup, teardown, upkeep, rules, components, or iconography, the less likely I am to enjoy it. Perhaps that's true for everyone, but I feel that this element especially influences whether I like a game or even give it a shot in the first place. And it seems that the more games I play, the less patience I have for exhausting and needy board game experiences. Fourth, I'm including our own publications among my top 100, but I'm also not. Here's my thought process. If this was a smaller list focused on highlighting the best games in a specific category, like top 10 games of 2024 for example, then I wouldn't feel comfortable cramming our own games onto it and crowding out others. And a top 100 games list feels similar, but different. The pool obviously is much larger, and at the end of the day, this list is a compilation of the games that I love getting to the table the most. And the truth is that any game we decide to publish is one that we love playing and that we want to share with others. To me, that's what top 100 lists are all about. As a compromise, I've created a separate section outside of my top 100 featured in the final episode of the series that discusses how I rank our publications among my all-time favorite games. So you can completely ignore that section and anything I mentioned from Bitewing Games, or you can simply take it at face value as a game I love to play and want to share with others. And finally, I own and love way more games than these 100. There are over 300 games in my collection, and any game that hangs around on my shelf is one that I enjoy playing and hope to get back to the table soon. These 300 plus games already survived the gauntlet of my careful initial research, cold-blooded acquisition filtering, and critical analysis playthroughs that thousands of other games have not. And this top 100 list only gets more crowded and competitive every year. So there are plenty of games I love that didn't make the cut. But just because you don't see a specific game among my top 100 does not at all mean that I dislike that game. So with all that out of the way, we're now ready to dive into my top 100 board games of all time, 2024 edition. And to start things off at number 100 is Courtesans. Sometimes it's nice to just gather around the table for a quick communal bashing. As a 20 to 30 minute game, Courtesans delivers with funny and cutthroat moments. Each turn, your hand of 3 cards must be split up. Play 1 to yourself, 1 to another player, and 1 to the table to influence the end game value of a suit. In addition to manipulating the incentives of the group, there are plenty of opportunities to nail each other either out of petty revenge or cunning calculation. That is my number 100, Courtesans. Number 99 is Patchwork. Patchwork is a widely recommended 2-player game, and for good reason. It combines the satisfaction of polyomino puzzling with smart economic considerations, including time management and a button economy. There is a reason why this one has been endlessly in print for 10 straight years. Patchwork is great for couples and or casual play. That is number 99, Patchwork. Number 98 is Seven Wonders Duel. Based on the big box hit Seven Wonders, this duel game has the honor of being the second highest rated 2-player only game on Board Game Geek. Does that mean it is the second best 2-player game ever created? That's for you to decide. All I know is that it is mega popular and mega fun. Players take turns drafting cards from a pyramid display as they build their civilization and wonders. It allows you to gun for 3 possible victory objectives and pressure your rival in their weakest categories. Fair warning, it is very possible that this game will soon be replaced for me by the upcoming The Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth, which promises to be an evolved spin-off of Seven Wonders Duel. So keep an eye out for that release later this year. That is number 98, Seven Wonders Duel. My number 97 is For Sale. For Sale is a fantastic filler game of bidding on a wide spectrum of abodes and then flipping those houses for profits. In Phase 1, you are spending money to assemble the best hand of house cards. In Phase 2, you are bidding with that hand to claim the best payouts. The objective is to become the richest player at game end, but you'll have to outwit your fellow players to earn the victory. The smartest move is not always to win every auction. Sometimes you are better off taking the loss in an auction and passing early to conserve your resources for more important bids later on. Nothing feels worse than wasting your best card on an auction that everyone else has played low for. Conversely, eking out the best money card of a round with a measly house makes you feel like a mastermind, and that roller coaster of emotions is the magic of For Sale. My number 96 is The Lord of the Rings: The Confrontation. If you love the idea of Stratego, but perhaps not the execution, then this one is absolutely for you. Reiner Knizia offers his take on Stratego's experience with a game that is also inspired by the Lord of the Rings trilogy. One player is trying to sneak Frodo all the way to Mordor without him getting captured, and the other player is trying to reclaim the ring or basically take over Middle-earth before the Fellowship stops them. Devious bluffing and brutal conflicts abound in this highly revered classic from the good Dr. Knizia that sadly hasn't seen a new edition in many years. Fortunately, publisher Ghost Galaxy recently announced an Ultimate Edition to be launched soon, so hopefully that version lives up to the legend. That is my number 96, The Lord of the Rings: The Confrontation. Number 95 is Skyrise. Perhaps this new release will only be a fleeting title on my list. Time will tell. But so far, Skyrise has proven to be a unique and engaging auction game at our table. In Skyrise, the bidding takes on a spatial element as players snake their proposed buildings across the board in increasingly higher bids. Eventually, one person wins, and their winning bid turns into a permanent building at that site. As the city spaces begin to fill with buildings, decisions become more critical, and auctions become more spicy. That is my number 95, Skyrise. 94 is Race for the Galaxy. Race for the Galaxy is a popular engine tableau builder, much like Terraforming Mars and Wingspan, except it is older and faster and tighter. So while it may not be as pretty as Wingspan or as sprawling as Terraforming Mars, Race for the Galaxy is far and away the reigning champion at my table. One trademark of this design comes at the start of each round, when players secretly and simultaneously select roles or phases that will activate for everyone. Those who can correctly predict their opponent's intentions will certainly have a leg up in the competition. That is number 94, Race for the Galaxy. My 93 is Love Letter. Love Letter is a classic filler game of holding one card in your hand and hoping you survive the gauntlet of each round. On your turn, you'll draw a second card into your hand and choose one of them to play. The objective is to be the last person standing or to have the highest card when the round ends, as that person will get to deliver their love letter to the princess. Love Letter works so well because there are a mere 16 cards in the entire deck, and only half that many card types. Newcomers quickly learn what their opponents may be holding in their hand, and the game of cat and mouse ensues. As more cards are played and revealed, the options narrow and the round reaches a crescendo. By deducing what card may be in your surviving opponent's hands, you'll take calculated risks to come out on top. That is number 93, Love Letter. My number 92 is Codenames. Codenames is the smash hit party game that every publisher wishes they had made. This stone cold classic pits two teams against each other as their spy masters give out clues to help their teammates guess the correct word cards. Even nearly 10 years after its release, Codenames never fails to be a hit with virtually any group. Few things are more satisfying than watching your team weave together 4 or 5 correct cards from a single clue. If you haven't played this yet, then do yourself a favor and try Codenames today. That is my number 92. 91 is Pipeline. Pipeline is a brutally satisfying economic game that sees players starting out with meager actions and eventually building up to a well-oiled engine over time. It also combines an interesting personal spatial puzzle with a sharply interactive turn order emphasis. Despite being one of the heavier games on my list, it still manages to play in under 2 hours with a fairly streamlined rule set. Much of the complexity stems from the strategic planning. That is number 91, Pipeline. My number 90 is Modern Art. While Modern Art isn't my favorite auction game from Reiner Knizia, and he's got a lot of them, it is still an absolute hoot to play. Players take turns auctioning off paintings across multiple different types of auctions, creating an energetic atmosphere with a hint of role-playing that rivals any party game. This amusement is supported by a clever system of valuations and payouts. And it is still so satisfying to smack the gavel on the table and declare, "Sold!" before greedily raking in the cash. That is Modern Art at number 90. My number 89 is Great Western Trail 2nd Edition. Cows, cowboys, and Wild West rondelles. What more could you want in a board game? Great Western Trail remains a favorite Alexander Pfister game for myself and many others, thanks to its wide range of strategic possibilities. It is so successful that it's received a 2nd edition plus 2 spin-offs. I haven't even tried the whole line, but I hear that vanilla Great Western Trail is the most streamlined and tight, so I'm happy with that. Like Pipeline, this meaty Euro game offers tons of depth to sink your teeth into. That is number 89, Great Western Trail 2nd Edition. My number 88 is Chinatown. I don't believe Chinatown has gotten any worse over the years, but admittedly it's taken a tumble on my top 100 list merely because I now usually opt for our own Zoo Vadis over Chinatown when selecting a negotiation game. I'm obviously biased, but I also like the wider player count, shorter playtime, and more creative negotiations that come from Zoo Vadis. Regardless, Chinatown is a great title if you want to wheel and deal with your friends or family. I love the thrill of dealing out cards, or lots, each round and discovering that you hold the perfect lot either for yourself or for another player, and then maximizing that golden opportunity. How much is this lot worth to you? Let's find out. Note, I haven't tried the new version of Chinatown called Waterfall Park because all of those changes make me slightly leery and depressed. So for now, I'll stick with my number 88, Chinatown. My number 87 is Radlands. Radlands and a few other titles like Blue Moon Legends might be the closest I ever get to the dueling collectible card game scene. I have a fear of such rabbit holes, much like one would have a fear of heights. But Radlands lets me enjoy the heights from a comfortable and safe distance by offering a complete and streamlined dueling game contained entirely in one small box. It doesn't take long at all to feel familiar with the deck and strategic possibilities here. I love how the game offers a huge variety of powerful characters and abilities, but the design never blindsides you. Anytime a player drops a new threat into the battlefield, their opponent has at least one turn to brace for impact. It never hurts when a game like this is gorgeous as well. That is my number 87, Radlands. My number 86 game of all time is Cat in the Box Deluxe Edition. I enjoy Trick Taker. Who doesn't? Apparently, all of us enjoy a good Trick Taker if the recent flood of new releases in this genre is any indicator. Cat in the Box Deluxe Edition squeezes into my top 100 list by being a unique and tense trick taker. All of your cards are suitless, formless, moldable. Once you play a card into a trick, you must declare its suit and claim the open space matching its number and declare its suit. If you don't feel like following suit, you can simply declare that your hand is now out of that suit. Easy, right? Wrong. It's all fun and games until somebody backs their hand into a catastrophic paradox. That is Cat in the Box Deluxe Edition at number 86. My number 85 is Carcassonne the Castle, also known as Zamek. Carcassonne provides a great two-player experience on its own, but like Pandemic, it has seen many spin-offs due to its popularity. One of those spin-off games is a two-player only version designed by the one and only Reiner Knizia that introduces some fantastic features to the Carcassonne system. Players are confined to adding tiles within a wall, and the wall itself functions as a score track with bonus corners that encourage you to stop on them exactly. Subtle changes like these make you think all the harder about where you want to place tiles and when you want to score them. It's easily my favorite way to play Carcassonne. Unfortunately, this one is very difficult to obtain unless you track down a used copy or order Zamek from Poland. But that is my number 85, Carcassonne the Castle, or Zamek. My number 84 game is Blue Lagoon. After years of resistance, I finally split up the dynamic duo of Blue Lagoon and Through the Desert, because admittedly, they are different games. I finally come to accept the fact that I would rather play Through the Desert between the two, but Blue Lagoon is still a mighty fine family weight game in its own right, and different enough to be worthy of its own place on my list. The standout feature of this design is found in the two-phase system of setting up huts in round 1 and spreading out from those huts and going after the leader in round 2. I've never had a bad play of this game, even when I've been trounced by my opponents, and that's the mark of a great strategy game. That is number 84, Blue Lagoon. My number 83 game is Iki. It's very possible that Iki is simply the Eurogame flavor of the year for me. Or in other words, it's lucky enough to be present in my mind when I'm updating this Goliath list of my favorite games. But as it stands, Iki is one of the countless modern Eurogames that I'm most keen to revisit. As I shared in my first impressions post earlier this year, somehow Iki manages to provide an experience that is more than the sum of its familiar parts. It's the kind of comfort food Eurogaming that every new title dreams to achieve. That is number 83, Iki, spelled I-K-I. My number 82 game is Caesar Seize Rome in 20 minutes. While I can't commend Caesar for its production quality and presentation, it manages to overcome those weaknesses by being a fantastic two-player filler game from Paolo Mori. You'll pick a tile hidden behind your screen and place it out onto a border of the map, exerting your influence on the two regions along that border. The player who closes off a region with the last tile gets a juicy bonus, but the player who has the most influence in a closed region takes a step closer to winning the game. It's so good that it makes me ache with hunger to collaborate with Paolo Mori on a publishing project. Paolo, I know you never read my posts, and I know you never listen to my podcast, but somehow I need you to hear this message. Come publish a game with us, please. That is my number 82, Caesar Seize Rome in 20 minutes. My number 81 game of all time is very similar, Blitzkrieg World War II in 20 minutes. Because Paolo didn't just do it once, he did it twice. Twice as he put out a banger of a 20-minute two-player game. Blitzkrieg differs from Caesar by replacing the region control with tug-of-war tracks. It's a two-player tug-of-war game across multiple theaters of combat. Yet there's still that same tension of deciding which tile to put out and whether to gun for a short-term bonus or a long-term victory. In many ways, this is a two-player version of Mori's Dogs of War, which may or may not be found later on this list. Spoilers. That is my number 81, Blitzkrieg World War II in 20 minutes. My number 80 is Caylus 1303. I probably don't give publisher Space Cowboys enough credit, because I'm just now realizing that they have multiple titles on my top 100 board games list. Caylus 1303 is the first of those titles, earning its place as one of my favorite worker placement games. Across several rounds, players contribute to a growing line of buildings, worker placement spaces that extend up to the castle. Meanwhile, you'll have to deal with the ruthless provost, who is out to spoil the fun of the newest and often most lucrative buildings, and your fellow competitors who delight in claiming your desired spaces first. It's tight, it's interactive, it's brutal, it's Caelus. That is my number 80 game, Caelus 1303. My number 79 game is Mysterium. It is not long or complicated, but Mysterium feels a bit like an event game in how it brings up to 7 people together in a social and collaborative way. One player acts as the ghost who divvies out vision cards to help each player guess their own suspect, location, and murder weapon. Because it is a cooperative game, players discuss the clues together and try to hash out what exactly the ghost is communicating to them. On top of that, players are still allowed to disagree by betting for or against each other's official guesses. All of this culminates in a climactic vote where the players must solve the murder, or quit their psychic escapades and go back to their day jobs, I suppose. That is Mysterium at number 79. My number 78 game is Dröe-Polter. I suppose I have a thing for ghostly games, but rather than solve their murder case, in Dröe-Polter, you are trying to satisfy their random whims. Players must each clench a fist of wacky objects, and then a card is revealed, telling them exactly what a ghost wants to see. The first person to drop the displayed objects, and only those objects, earns a bell. First person to 5 bells wins. The only problem is that those tiny jingling bells get added to your fist of stuff, and if you accidentally drop a bell, then it is gone forever. What a delightfully strange game, that Dröe-Polter, at number 78 on my list. My number 77 game is Galactic Renaissance. This sibling design to Inis turned out to be far more polarizing than I ever would have guessed. Perhaps that's the danger of marketing a game as the follow-up to a widely beloved legend. With enough similarities in their DNA, some people might decide to torch one and exalt the other. But while Galactic Renaissance is from the same team who made Inis, and it likewise features area control, driven by card effects, it still feels like a very different beast to me. Rather than drafting a few cards and jockeying for one of 3 victory conditions, players are cycling through their decks and racing to score 30 points first. I've thoroughly enjoyed exploring the strategic depth and tactical possibilities in this sci-fi epic. That is Galactic Renaissance at number 77. My number 76, and the last one on today's list, is Lacuna. Publisher CMYK Games has a knack for finding refreshingly unique games and sharing them with the world. Lacuna by Mark Gerritz is one such design that features a production as elegant as its gameplay. Lacuna comes packaged in a large cylinder that functions like a salt shaker. You'll sprinkle the wooden flower tokens out onto a large map to set up the game, and then take turns positioning your pawns between matching flowers to claim them. This simple flower collection game only takes 10 or 15 minutes to play, but you'll think carefully about where to position your pawns. After all the pawns are out, the remaining flowers are claimed by the nearest pawn, and then the winner is the player with the most flower majorities. As I stated in my first impressions episode, the simplicity and speed of Lacuna, combined with the unique abstract challenge and perfect production, make this one of the most fresh 2-player games in years. Lacuna has a breezy timelessness to it that many 2-player titles can only dream of providing. It's not the most tense or riveting game among my collection of duelers, but it doesn't want or need to be. So that's going to do it for this episode, part 1 of my top 100 board games of all time. I plan to be back next week with games 75 through 51. But in the meantime, let me tell you a bit about our next Kickstarter project, the Secret Epic Big Box Knizia game. This month, October, Bitewing Games is launching the most epic Reiner Knizia Kickstarter project ever. And yes, currently it is a secret, but not for long. At any rate, ambitious publications like this, and in-depth episodes like the one you just listened to, are only made possible by the support of our Kickstarter backers. So please be sure to follow the pre-launch page. There's a link in the description of this podcast episode that will take you to that pre-launch page, so you don't miss out on the grand reveal. And then you can support the game when it launches if it strikes your fancy. We here at Bitewing Games love creating and sharing so many amazing games, so thank you for your support. My name is Nick Murray, and you've been listening to the Bitewing Games podcast.